Terence McKenna once said it best, that science asks of you one miracle. That's the Big Bang.
Yeah.
There's one miracle. It really is kind of like a miracle.
Yeah.
If in the beginning there was nothing, and then God created the earth and the skies. And it's essentially what the Bible is trying to say. They're just doing it in a way.
And the Bible got it right. They got the order right.
Right.
You know?
I think it's based on an understanding that people had achieved. Because if you think about the Bible, right, and if all these people are correct about the original history of sophisticated civilization, if the Randall Carlsons and the Graham Hancocks and the Robert Shocks of the world and the John Anthony West, if they're correct in the timeline of, like, say, the most sophisticated society that we are aware of, which is Africa, if those people that lived in Africa 30,000, 40,000 years ago in Egypt, if they created a society that was infinitely more sophisticated than anything that we had ever seen before, like, how did they do that? Who did that? And what was that like? Like, what the fuck was that like? What was that world like back then? I mean, have you ever really stopped and tried to think and imagine what was that world like back then? I mean,
well, how about that you have a world in Central and South America where they also had built things many thousands of years ago that still, like, how the fuck did you do that?
Yeah. How'd you do that?
Well, how did y'all make those things?
Yeah.
How in the world, and then move them?
Well, I think if things go down and then people have to rebuild, I think it takes a long time before people figure out what happened. I think it takes a long time. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion that you see in the Bible comes from. Like, God made the earth and the sky and everything in like 6 days, right? And then on the sixth day, he rested. Okay. What are they actually saying, though? You're getting things that are translated from an oral history of 1,000 years, and then they're writing it down in Aramaic, they're writing it down in ancient Hebrew, and you're getting it many years later, long after.
Diluted and warped.
All kinds of. Think about what people are willing to do today to the Constitution. Today. With all the information that we have about the dangers of this. Think about what they're trying to do today. Now imagine what you would do if you had the real knowledge of the birth of the solar system, of the development of human beings, and the God energy of the universe, and you tried to translate it over an oral history because there's chaos, because there's no more cities anymore, and everyone's dead, and you're just like hunting and gathering as cave people, and you're trying to relay this origin story of mankind. And then it gets written down in parables, and it gets written down in Latin, and it gets translated over the years. And then people try, okay, then they sit down and they look at it many years later and they go, what the fuck were they trying to say? Like, what were they trying to say? Because so much of what they're trying to say, if you're really paying attention, like, it seems like it's kind of laid out like the origins of the universe. If in the beginning there was nothing.
Yeah.
Like, they're talking about the Big Bang. If these scientists all agree, how do they know that
then
back
there was
then?
light. That would be the Big Bang.
Wouldn't they assume back then that God was always around? Why would they assume that God had to make everything? Why would they assume that there was a beginning and an end? Just because they have a beginning and an end? Is that rational? Why would they assume that? And why did everybody assume that? Maybe because they fucking knew. Maybe because at one point in time, whether it's 10,000 years ago, 20,000 years ago, they had figured a lot of this shit out.
Well, someone figured it out for the pyramids and the way that they were built to be aligned so perfectly with a true north. And
just to be able to construct, those people were that smart. Why wouldn't we imagine they had an understanding of the birth of the universe? Why wouldn't we imagine that they would have this bizarre understanding of the way morality and good and evil play out with human beings? Yeah. Maybe they were right. Maybe they were right, but it all just got fucked up over the thousands of years after asteroid impacts and the thousands of years of the destruction of the advanced civilizations and the world going back into chaos and then slowly rebuilding. And you're rebuilding with these ancient texts that you find in clay pots in Qumran. And you ever seen when they translate like the Dead Sea Scrolls and they lay them out and they have to try to figure out which pieces go with which scroll, and they do it based on DNA. All this DNA is from this cow, so let's take this scroll from this cow skin and put it together and try to read what the fuck they said. It's incredible. But it makes sense. It makes sense if you buy into the idea that there's been a restart of civilization, and then you go back and say, okay, what is the history of the Bible? Like, how old is it? What's the oldest version? Like, what's the oldest version of the stories?
Version. Like, who knows?
Right,
the
right.
oral
Who knows?
version.
Right. What was the original? Like, you're playing a game of Telegram, right, or telephone with over 1,000 years.
Yeah.
With who knows how many people. But if we've seen what the Egyptian people were able to build, what was that like? How sophisticated were they? And maybe what we're getting at in the Bible is just the longest game of telephone of a true story. It's just all kind of gone up in stories, and God's testing you, and all this thing about, God telling this guy to kill his kid. It's just a little screwed up. But it's showing you that there are evil forces at play, and there are temptations.
It's
and you must
digestible
resist
lessons
those. Yeah.
in a story that you can understand.
Exactly.
And
The
by
heart of it,
7
there's some
days,
truth to it.
Because what is a day to
Right.
God?
Yeah, what does that mean?
Is that a billion years?
Yeah.
A million years?
100 billion?
Who knows?
Who fucking knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
In a way that you can digest it.
Yes. And then our version of it is this simplified, uneducated, barbaric version that gets translated from people that are involved in sword fights. They're fighting each other with swords and hacking each other to death for thousands of years while they're telling this story. The Crusades, all these different things that people did during that time, horrific things. And during that time, they're doing it, many of them, in defense of their God, in defense of their religion. They're motivating people by these books.
Yeah.
It's fascinating stuff. It's fascinating. But when you hear a guy like Tucker Carlson saying that what else do you know, bro? Say what you know. Like, what makes you say that? Because if that really is what it is, that would make sense to me why the government would keep that information from people. Because if we found out that people were essentially just a vessel of souls, and that we are essentially designed to give birth to artificial intelligence, and then that will be the end of us. So that's why they're not worried about nuclear war. That's why they're not worried about the environment. That's why they don't give a fuck about anything. This is all coming to an end.
We're there.
Yeah.
Like, we have it. We have it to the degree that people are already relying on it heavily.
Yeah.
Advertising agencies are relying on it to tell them how to cut a commercial, how present the logo needs to be in the commercial. Like, this is happening right now.
Oh, yeah.
This shit just appeared 3 years ago.
Right. Well, I think the distribution of information has changed so radically over the last couple hundred years, and particularly over the last 20, that you're seeing these trends now where more people are inclined to abandon a lot of even if you remain religious or you keep a thought or a belief in a higher power, people are more inclined to entertain these concepts of science and to take in the understanding of what has been observed and documented and written about among scholars and academics. And there's more people accepting that. If you look at the number of agnostic people now as opposed to 20, 30 years ago, it's rising. It's changing. And I think there's also, because of you and because of Neil deGrasse Tyson and Sean Carroll and all these other people that are public intellectuals that are discussing this kind of stuff, people like myself have a far greater understanding of this than I think people did 30, 40 years ago. Yeah. And that trend is continuing, I think, in a very good direction.
Yeah. I mean, what we should say is that science, we don't know all the answers. So we don't know where the laws of nature came from. We don't know why the universe began in the way that it did. If indeed it had a beginning. So we don't know why the Big Bang was very, very highly ordered, which is ultimately, as Cheryl actually, you mentioned him, often points out, and he's right, that the whole difference, the only difference between the past and the future, so-called arrow of time, is that in the past the universe was really ordered, and it's getting more disordered. And that's that necessary state of order at the start of the universe, which is really the reason that we exist. That's the reason, because the universe began in a particular form. We don't know why that was. So we will probably find out at some point, and it'll be something to do with the laws of nature. But so I'm always careful. I don't want to... Science sometimes sound arrogant, right? It can sometimes sound like it's the discipline of saying to people, well, you're not right.
Yes, yes.
And it's not the discipline saying you're not right. It's saying this is what we found out. So I like to say that it provides a framework in which, if you want to philosophize or you want to do theology or you want to ask these deep questions about why we're here, you have to operate within that framework because it's just an observational framework.
Yes.
So everything we've said is stuff we've discovered. It's not stuff that someone made up, right? We understand nuclear physics. We can build nuclear reactors, for example. So we understand the physics of stars. So we understand that the stars built the carbon and oxygen, and we know how they did it. We can see it because, as I said before, if you look far out into the universe, you're looking back in time. And as you look back in time, you see less carbon and less oxygen. So we have a direct observation that in the earliest universe, there wasn't any because we can see it. And now we see that there is some, and we know how it was made. So I think it's important to be humble talking about science. And you're not saying this is the way that it is. I mean, you are in a sense, but it's not able to answer ultimate questions at the moment. Able to answer even whether the universe had a beginning or not. We don't even know that. And I gave a talk to I was asked to give a talk to some bishops in the UK about cosmology, and that'll be great fun. And so I went and gave them this talk, and at the end I said, I've got some questions. So if the universe is eternal, and it might not have had a beginning, if it's eternal, what place is there for a creator? That's a good question.
Right.
They didn't have an answer, of course. Right?
An eternal creator.
But I might be eternal, and we might discover that. So we don't know, but we might. So I think my point is that these other human, it's very natural to religion's a natural thing, right? People you see across the world in all different cultures. But I think that in the 20th century, religion needs to operate within the framework. If it's going to operate, there are still mysteries, and it is appropriate to think about what it means to be human. I've given you my view of what it means, but I don't think the problem comes when your theology or your philosophy forces you to deny some measurement. Now, these things are measurements. We're not saying it's not my opinion the universe is 13.8 billion years old. We measure. It's like having an opinion between the distance from LA to New York. No, you can't have an opinion on that.
Right.
We know what it is. And it's the same,
right.
It's like, these things, the people say the earth's flat or whatever. So it isn't, and we've measured it. So it's just stop it. So, but that doesn't mean you can't be spiritual and you can't be religious. I would say it doesn't mean you can't believe in God or God. That's not ruled out.
Force, is it just energy, or do you anthropomorphize it into like a being that you can recognize and think about?
Right. But there's kind of no denying, at least from a recognizable, if you had to look, how do you quantify it? How do you measure it? There's no denying that evil takes place. You could come up with any number of massacres throughout history, and you say that's an evil act.
There's no question.
Right. So evil is a thing that's real.
If there's good, there's evil.
And there have been many, many things that people have done. You're like, wow, good exists in the world. There is still good. So we know both those things are real things. We just don't know what's the root of them all. And are there really angels and demons, or are those the scapegoats for this bizarre dance of good and evil that just exists in the world?
Mm-hmm. Well, if it weren't, for Adam and Eve eating the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, there wouldn't be any perception of good and evil. It'd just be true or false. Which is, the reason that Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden, because at the beginning, it was, they were living in a world of either, truth or falsehood.
You're right.
And after eating the fruit of the difference between good and evil, they became opinionated. Well, that's good, I like it. That's bad, I don't like it. But the issue of true or false got muddled.
Yeah.
And they no longer were fit inhabitants of the Garden of Eden, of paradise.
What's your take, Lilith?
Yeah, Lilith. Well, there's no mention of her in the Bible per se, but there's a lot of mention of her in the rabbinic literature that sprung up after the Bible. Yeah. The story is that I think after Cain killed Abel, the Adam. No, was it that after that? I thought it was after Adam and Eve were expelled from the garden. That they stopped having sex. So Adam, then was just sleeping, with Lilith, and they spawned innumerable demons as a result of their relationship. Yeah, and after a while, Adam and Eve, reconciled, and they got the things together again. Yeah, but plays a role in the understanding of evil in the world, like it's the result of the spawn of Lilith.
What do you think it was originally?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's called midrash. It's the explication of the Bible, by the rabbis. So it's what's called extra biblical.
Ah.
Yeah, and I've only looked into extra biblical stuff to a certain extent.
What's this of that stuff?
Imagination, and I think the surrounding environment, societies, culture, influenced by the Greeks, the Sumerians, the Akkadian Hittites. There's a lot of accumulation of other cultures onto interpreting the stories that occur in the text. A lot of fanciful things, and interesting things like, for example, Lilith is the source of demonic entities out there.
Yeah, I found out about Lilith like 6 months ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'd never even heard about it. Do you remember when we found out about Lilith? Somebody brought it up on a show, right?
Yeah, who brought it up, I'm wondering.
I don't remember, but I was like, what? Who's Lilith?
Yeah, was it Jordan Peterson?
It could have been.
Yeah, but
very
because
possibly.
he's a keen student of the Bible.
Very possibly. It was him. I do not remember though, but I remember thinking like, wow, like, and then the original story, like, so when you're talking about the biblical translations of the Adam and Eve story that we're all accustomed to, it's all a watered down sort of or a strange translated version of the ancient Hebrew. But you've read the actual ancient Hebrew version of it. Like, what did you get out of it? Like, what did you?
Well, most of the translations of the Bible are quite good. Like, the King James Version, it's very accurate. Yeah, it's a bit stilted.
Is anything missing in the translation from when you read it in ancient Hebrew, or it's pretty clear?
It's fairly one-to-one correspondence between the Hebrew words and the English translation. Certain things are interpreted through a Christian lens because the Christians wrote the King James Bible translation.
Right.
But the words and the grammar and the natives, they're pretty much accurate. Yeah, they spent a lot of time working on painstaking translations. So there was a responsibility to do it accurately.
I mean, that story, like trying to pass that one down for 1,000 years.
Yeah.
So there was only two people, and then there was an apple.
Right.
And a snake talked Eve into eating that apple, and everything got fucked.
Yeah. It's a strange story, isn't it?
Very strange story. What do you think it really was all about?
I think there were two people named Adam and Eve.
For real?
As if they were real.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you imagine that there was an Adam and Eve and visualize the garden they were in and the snake and their interactions, there you have it.
So I think the biblical interpretation is a literal recalling of actual events that took place.
No, I don't think that. Well, it's like if you smoke DMT and you enter into this world, it's true, it's overwhelmingly convincing, it's got its own laws, its own system. Things are regular. Like certain things happen, certain interactions take place. Yeah, and you're there. You're convinced it's real, and you interact with it to the best of your ability. So I think that's the case with the natives in the text. It's not. It isn't a matter of interpreting what they mean, as much as understanding what happened.
Boy, that's so. It's not interpreting what they mean, but understanding what happened.
Yeah, like what did the snake say to Eve?
So a snake really talked to Eve, though.
It was if a snake talked to Eve.
As if.
Yeah.
So perhaps a psychedelic experience, perhaps an altered state of consciousness.
No, I think it was a case of a woman standing near a tree and a snake coming up to her and saying certain things, and they have a conversation.
For real?
As if it were real. Well, the stories have been told so many times.
Right, that's the problem.
And they seem well. If you
seems like everything on Eve too, which is like a little suspect. I like to hear her side of it.
Well, the one who got punished without even having a chance to explain himself was the. So God asks Adam what happened, and he asks Eve what happened, and he just lays it on the snake.
Right.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell her anything. I can't even talk. He wanted to eat that apple. She blamed me.
Well, back then, snakes talk. Or in that world, snakes talk. Well, they were the wisest of all the animals in the garden. So, they could speak.
Right, but you speak things as if, like we're talking about when you go to the zoo, the monkeys swing from the vines, it's normal. Snakes talk.
Well, it of a paradox. Like if you...
Let me ask you this.
If you treat those stories as if they were real, you're opening yourself up to this universe of Adam and Eve in the garden. Then they had Cain and Abel. Killed Abel. Then Cain had children, and his children begot the 70 nations. And then there was a flood because mankind was bad. Mm-hmm. Noah and his family survived. They all spoke one language afterwards. There was on a tower. There was Nimrod. There was Abraham. There was Isaac and Jacob. So it's this world which seems to be quite coherent, quite consistent. It all ties together. It's quite consistent from book to book, from narrative to narrative. It is a different way of looking at the Bible. It isn't dogma like you have to do this or you have to do that, or it isn't like a Jungian archetype or a psychodynamic wish fulfillment. It's this world that that is articulated, spelled out in a very ancient, very influential text.
So, is it also possible that something completely different took place, but that over time and over a oral tradition of who knows how many hundreds of years before they actually wrote it down, and then writing it down, that you're getting a version of the actual event that's very different than what really took place, but you think about it like the version in the scripture. And if you think about it in the version of the scripture, are you thinking about it like as if this was an event as recorded, or are you thinking this is a representation of an archetype or some sort of moment in human history that they're trying to recollect and pass down?
Well, if you consider, kind of. Well, if you consider the text to be prophetically received. Prophecy is communication between the divine and man. And, the text was prophetically received. In fact, Philo of Alexandria, one of, Terence McKenna's heroes, used to say, the most accurate historians were the prophets, because they heard it, directly, from the initiator of the event, the witness of the event, the one who, could understand the event in the huge context. So it's a prophetically received, text, which means it contains information received from a spiritual sort of level, which you would think is a universal field of sorts.
How much have you ever paid attention, if at all, to any of that ancient Sumerian stuff, like the Anunnaki and...
Some. Yeah, I watched this really great documentary a few years back. But I wouldn't consider myself as knowing much about it.
Right. That to me is one of the weirder origin stories.
So what origin story? On my record, quite fascinating, but not the details.
Well, there's multiple versions of it. First of all, the story of this, the fantastic story is told by Zecharia Sitchin. So Zecharia Sitchin, who wrote The 12th Planet, and he wrote several other books. He was a biblical scholar and a linguist, and he spent a lot of time studying the ancient Sumerian text, the cuneiform. And what he believes is that it tells a story of an ancient relationship between a race of beings on a far distant planet that's in an elliptical orbit. And it comes near Earth every 3,600 years, and that they had engineered human beings out of lower primates. They had like accelerated our evolution, and that all of what we know about the cosmos, all of what we know about, like they have these detailed, I don't see the ancient tablets that have a detailed map of the solar system from 6,000 years ago.
Right,
They
okay.
have the sun in the center and all the moon, and they have these really enormous beings. And these enormous beings were supposed to be these things called the Anunnaki.
Okay.
And the literal translation is those from heaven to earth came.
Uh-huh.
It's one of the weirder, like if you
Anunnaki.
love a great science fiction version of the origin story of humans, it's the most fun one.
Yeah, it brings to mind, the sons of God, the B'nai Elohim, which occur in the story of the flood, and
The Nephilim too.
yeah, the Nephilim, the Rephaim, they were huge, they were giants.
Yes. Yeah.
Men of renown.
Yeah.
And they intermarried, or they had sex with the daughters of man, and from them came a race.
Yeah.
So the story is interpreted or perceived through the lens of the Hebrew Bible too.
Really?
Yeah. Well, there are, that story in the text before the flood is the B'nai Elohim come down to earth. They have intercourse with the daughters of man, and out of those relationships comes this race of giants.
That was a fun one.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Well, they all got swept away in the flood. So that's an interesting turn of events.
If you interpret the flood as the Younger Dryas impact theory, which created the flood, which lines up.
Right, that does.
Yeah. It lines up time-wise, lines up with how it would go down. Yeah. Just no evidence of giants. That's the only thing we're missing. If they found some giants.
Well, in the meantime, you can assume that the giants were real, and understand their origin, what they were like, what they did, why they did it, what the results were.
And that is the mushroom that was documented in the Sacred Mushroom and the Cross, where John Marco Allegro alleged that the entire Christian religion was essentially a misunderstanding, and it was really all about the consumption of these psychedelic mushrooms and fertility rituals, and that these were all sort of captured in stories and tales and parables. And
it was an academic side for him to come out with that statement, and still very controversial.
Read his work?
Yes, I have.
What do you think?
Linguistically, the guy's way over my head. If you read his books, all about linguistics, one of the translators of the Dead Sea Scrolls, way beyond my ken of knowledge. It's so far beyond my ken of knowledge, I can't make rhyme or reason out of it.
That seems to be the one with it. Most people can't.
Yeah. So, and there's threads of truth in all of this, but I don't buy it. Space on the grandiose conclusions that he made, but clearly mushrooms have inspired religion.
Yes.
And I teach these workshops on gourmet and medicinal mushrooms, and at one of these workshops, this very spiritual guy, he's very quiet, but definitely, it looked like the real deal. He waited until everyone was gone, and he, Paul, I've been sent here. And I said, really? I'm a devout Christian. I'm in Big Bram's inner circle. Take psilocybin mushrooms as sacraments. Jesus. And it's brought us closer to Jesus, closer to our religion. Now, I don't care if you're Muslim or Christian or Hindu. The idea of these mushrooms making you feel the spiritual universe, more spiritually connected, given your cultural heritage and your reference points. But he said these are extremely important. My mother was a charismatic Christian. I met some people in her group who came to their religious beliefs through psychedelics. Don't do psychedelics now. That was their portal. They had their big revelation through psychedelics. So the connection between psilocybin and magic mushrooms and religion, I think has a lot of credibility, and there's lots of great examples of that. The specificity of some of the arguments people make, I have great doubts about.
Interesting. What about in the ancient Hindu religions? The ancient Hinduism and some of the ancient books speak of various sacraments that have sort of never been defined, right?
Yeah, and why is the Brahmin cows sacred? It was out of cow poop in India, and yet they won't eat cows. And Buddha supposedly died from a mushroom. He was given a mushroom by a peasant and ingested the mushroom and died. So there is that connection. I've always thought it curious that Psilocybe cubensis is such a religious provoking mushroom, and yet cows are highly revered as being sacred. Well, you would keep the mother of the mushroom sacred.
Yes,
you want to protect it, of course. But again, these are at times when fables and parables and religious rites were controlled by the cognoscente, and they were the gatekeepers of knowledge, too powerful for the general population to understand or appreciate, and so they protected that knowledge. Right. And that's the rule of most religions, is that the inner circle, holds keys to the kingdom. And what's happened with Orthodox religions is they create institutions where you have to pay tithings in order to have a gatekeeper to have a contact with God. And that, I think, is the problem with monotheism versus polytheism.
Jack, before he died, was working on a book about psychedelic drugs, specifically mushrooms, and religious experiences. And he had some really crazy old paintings that he had found that showed people that were naked, seemingly dancing in ecstasy with a translucent mushroom around them. And the idea being that this is supposed to, this image was supposed to represent someone who was tripping.
There's a lot of really interesting books that have been published that show art, going back of years, even into the late 1300s, showing Christian art where mushrooms are pretty easily seen. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of history to that, but it becomes the unfathomable. I mean, maybe you can imagine it to be true, but how can you prove it to be true?
Right. How can?
Yeah. So a lot of that is it's great historical information. Probably a lot of it's true. Hard to say which is true and which is not.
But it seems reasonable, right?
Yeah, but in modern times now, Johns Hopkins, the clinical studies are on mysticism, sexuality, showing that these are some of the most spiritually significant experiences of people's lives. The interesting thing about the Johns Hopkins studies is that 70% of the people had positive experiences, and 14 months later, they still describe their experiences as being significantly positive. Their friends, their colleagues, their fellow workers also say that it materially changed these people's personality. But the 30% of the people who had negative experiences, the negativity of the experience did not extend more than the experience itself. So this speaks to remembering. And what's been determined is when you have these really profound spiritual experiences, it sits with you. And when you remember it, you rekindle that thought. And this may be a way of overlaying PTSD. Rather than having the reference standard that's associated with PTSD, you supplant it with a positive experience. But the people who had negative experiences during tripping did not have negative consequences, did not extend more than the experience itself. So this was a profound insight. And so John Hopkins, Roland Griffiths emailed me recently. They have other clinical studies that are ongoing, looking at one which just got published on meditators given placebos versus getting high doses of psilocybin, and then measuring consequences of those experiences months or a year or two later. And again, the same thing is reinforced. These psilocybin mushroom experiences create a positive reference point that you can capitalize on by remembering them subsequent from this experience by not even having to take them again. That is profound. When you have a happy memory that you can anchor your personality on, it's a changer.
Yeah. I just I wonder if we're ever going to see in our lifetime centers where you can go and a trained professional can guide you through something like this.
It's happening now.
Is it?
Yes. The Cal Institute of Integrative Studies, based in San Francisco, is training therapists. In Canada, there are therapists. In Europe, there are therapists. There are training programs now in psychedelic therapy. This is something that has a tremendous momentum. Indigenous peoples have a really nice structure. Many of them do, not all. Many have a really good structure for the responsible use of these substances. us are the displaced peoples, and I would call us European-based people and many other people displaced. We don't have the same constructs historically that we can operate within. And so the psychedelic therapist movement is huge right now. Canada is leading the way. The Canadian government is very, very positive towards psychedelic therapy because of the opioid crisis and because of significant results. There's another movie, this has come out, called Dosed, and it tracks a heroin a young lady in Vancouver. It is a heroic movie. It is not one of these, you kind of feel good at the end of the movie, but it is intense. And she's doing iboga, and she also does high doses of mushroom. But the opioid crisis is so pervasive, there's so poor treatments available, that through these psychedelic therapies in several days, they're seeing a tremendous success and people breaking, decades-long opioid addiction within a week. And so the psychedelic therapists are integral to that success. And so there are clinics now arising all over the world for this, in Portugal and Mexico and Spain, Jamaica. The clinics are arising specifically to meet the needs of people who are trying to get these legally so they don't get in trouble with the law. So in Portugal and Spain and Jamaica, for instance, these are legal.
We're sitting here and we're talking about the age, as if guns were just created. When in
Something's
reality,
wrong.
right? But something's wrong. But what's wrong?
What do you
It's
think
not
is
the
wrong?
guns.
What do you
I'm
think it
asking you.
is?
I think it's wrong.
Mental health.
Right.
Yeah.
So I say I agree with you. I think it's the deterioration of culture altogether.
Yep.
They used to be taught the Bible rule. People make fun of that now. Now we've got this culture where you're making fun of kids. Religion is we're so far away from religion. That's weird to us. Teaching religion is you've got a scarlet letter if you come in as a holy Christian kid in a normal public education thing. You've got the family structure where it's these kids are running the house days. I look on Facebook and it's supposed to be funny when 4-year-old is acting like Cardi B. I'm okay, yes, it's funny because she's 4, but it's not funny because she's 4, right?
How do you feel about Lil Tay?
Who's Lil Tay?
You don't know who Lil Tay is?
I love Cardi B. I know who Lil Tay is. Who's Lil Tay?
Lil Tay is kind of out of the news now because they found that it's a hustle. She's a 9-year-old Asian girl from Vancouver? Is that where it's from? And she talks mad shit, throws money around, calls everybody bitches and haters.
That's my
bitches.
point. This is considered funny. It's entertaining,
Yeah.
the fact that, and we're okay with that. And so parents are pushing their kids to be more outrageous because there's a way that they can make it. To
Here
me,
is
it's
Lil Tay spotted hanging out with Rick Rubin.
it's
Not over.
It's not over yet.
It's not over.
Rick
Wow.
Rubin. Oh, she's
She how old is she?
she's
She
got
looks like
double
she's.
fingers. Oh, those are hooks. She's
Yeah.
got the horns up, and she's got a G-Wagon in front of her.
It's just like the Cash Me Outside girl.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So we don't talk about any of that. We don't talk about the fact that we no longer focus on family. We no longer focus on religion. Doesn't mean to be that everyone needs to be religious, but there's structure in religion, right? There's structure in me when I grew up and my grandpa make us read the Bible around the table. There was some structure to that and lessons and prayers and then there's this mass, the Facebook, the snapping, the Instagram, the Twitter. It's we've changed the world and expected children to stay the same. Everybody talks about it. So instead they say it's the gun's fault. We need strict gun legislation, but the entire world has shifted. We're not talking about those changes, the dynamic of the world that it did. So I just have a different position. I think it starts with family, structure. I think we need religion back. I think that needs to stop being such a word. It needs to stop being mocked roundly by the media. It shouldn't be funny, when Joy Behar, something about Jesus and the whole audience giggles. That's weird.
Well, she says something Mike Pence being mentally ill.
Yeah, because he talks to Jesus.
Right.
Think about how weird that is. How weird that the stuff that we would be normal, praying, talking to Jesus. When I grew up, that was my grandparents' generation. That was, everyone was religious. And now we're so far away from that, right? That seems like it's okay to mock, and we roundly mock it all the time. So the structure in the home is, in my opinion, the most important thing that needs to change. The fact that so many people are growing up without fathers in the home is something that needs to change. Letting your kid have a fit count when they're 7, right? There's just too much. It's the information age, but what information are they downloading?
Well, I definitely think that people need structure. I definitely think that people need family and community and all those good things. But when it comes to religion, it's like, which one is right?
That's not about being right.
All of them?
It's not about being
anyone?
right. It's not about being right.
What about Scientology?
No, it's not. I'm going to be honest. I know nothing about Scientology, so I'm not. I know that people hate Scientology. That's all I know about it.
Created by a science fiction writer.
Okay.
And it's all nonsense.
Right.
You need to know.
Okay. Yeah. So
it's one of the dumbest religions of all time. If you read like what they stand for, what they're all about. Leah Remini, who was in it for years.
Yeah, I didn't watch her.
She'd been on my podcast and explained her journey into it and what happened with it and when she started to question it. And there's a whole thing. There's a what is the fucking HBO documentary? It's also the book, the HBO on Scientology, the Lawrence Wright. Going Clear. Yeah.
Yeah.
I read the book and I watched the documentary.
It's like so crazy.
Well,
I know nothing about it besides like Tom Cruise. I'm gonna be honest. I'm totally ignorant.
Yeah. It's for some people. Here's the thing. For some people, it's structure and it's helpful.
Right.
Ideologies are helpful sometimes because they give you like a format to live your life by, or scaffolding to keep your moral beliefs inside of these boundaries, and it helps you get ahead and you have purpose and decision making. But at the end of the day, it's a cult.
Right,
And there's a lot of them.
Right.
There's a lot of different ones. So, how do you decide?
It's not about the stuff that comes from, I think, just learning certain lessons. It doesn't need to be, I'm not saying like we all need to like.
From structure.
Like the Bible used to be taught in school, objectively. It would be taught by people that, were not practicing Christian, right? Used to be taught in school objectively because there's still lessons that are tied in these Bible stories. It's nothing to do with whether or not you don't need to then say, we go to church and then we pray in school and all that stuff. Almost extract that and try to teach these lessons objectively. But what kids are learning now is like how to be an anarchist, like feminism 101, and you're like actually fostering an angry culture by telling them that they should be outraged. We are in outrage culture, and then you're surprised when somebody does something outrageous.
Right.
It's a little bizarre to me. It's like everything should piss you off. Everything should make you angry. Everything should make you upset. Everything is unjust. Everything is and I don't know why this kid just shut up at school. Why was he so angry? It's like we're weird. It's like we're weirdly fake, and no one wants to have a question. The shooting happens, and everyone wants to talk about the NRA, and then David Hogg is back on the news.
Jordan Peterson has some interesting ideas about religion and the fundamental beliefs and the lessons that are learned from things like the Bible and how they apply to human life and that our own belief systems. Without these sort of structures and belief systems, is one of the things that leads civilization astray, and that it's done that before and things go awry. Well,
I actually had this debate with Charlie, and I did a panel down in D.C., and we were talking about whether, the reintroduction of God and teaching him into school. And I said, at some point, there seems to be the struggle. I have this idea that, like, human beings, in a certain way, we're doomed to just keep repeating history. I'm obsessed with mythology. I'm obsessed with like Egyptian history, hieroglyphics, like any of that, like where they tell stories, especially Greek mythology, because the lessons are there and we just keep doing it, right? Greed, lust, like the human beings fall for, right? So I had this idea when we were talking, because Charlie is an evangelical Christian. I'm not, right? I believe in
this super smart guy is an evangelical Christian.
Yes.
So does he believe like Jesus came back to life?
Yes.
Really?
Yes, he's an evangelical Christian.
So he believes that someone died, and then 3 days later, they came back to life, and that they walked on water and
you have to. I haven't really gotten into it. I'm not the person that should ever be like debating or talk religion. It's not my like shtick, I guess. But so what I said to him, because me and him both believe that in many ways the reason that the government has the media has started roundly dissing God, right? Like, and it's because the government wants to be God, right? So if people
Wait a minute. Do you think media is responding to the government's suggestion? Is that what you think? The reason why people are going after religion is because the media is responding to some sort of orders from the government?
Not orders. That's wrong. So it's
directive.
Andrew Breitbart said that politics is downstream from culture, right? So, and you can argue that they feed into each other, whatever it is. But there's definitely something between culture and politics that is linked, inextricably linked. When everyone's on the same page, like, so if the government wants to get bigger, which it has been doing, right, and wants people to look to them for answers, it has been doing, you have to understand they have to sort of destroy everything else that they would potentially be looking to for answers, right? So instead of when you're down and out, people would just go to pray, right, or believing in your family or the family structure, to know that no matter what, you think the government is the answer. And that is what a leftist, at the end of the day, the left believes that the government can fix all of their problems. And I find, especially when I speak to a lot of leftists, do not believe in religion. Like, there's just a thing. It's a trend. I've noticed that, I'm not religious. I'm not saying that, there's something wrong with it, but leftists tend to be, really apart from religion. So the argument could definitely be made that the destruction of believe Bible, of stop teaching the Bible, is because you want to make it so that every time you problem, because you're still our soul, we still need to believe in something. We're naturally beings that believe that something can fix something. I really believe that it's the reason why we go get our arms read, right? Like, we just there's something else. Somebody has the answer. And people are starting to believe it's government in America.
Well,
and it freaks me out.
I agree with you that people like structure, and I agree with you that people without religion try to find that structure and those rules and other things.
Correct.
But I don't believe that this is like some calculated move by the government.
Not calculated,
I think it's human nature. I think it's human nature.
I got off on a giant time reading about giant. And it's like anytime the Smithsonian got involved, it was just shut down.
Yeah. The giant stuff is weird because there's a lot of documentation of people finding giants, like enormous
giant bones,
10, 15 foot tall humans. And then there's also the Nephilim in the Bible that are giants that consumed everything, David and Goliath. There's giants in the Bible, and it makes you think, like, okay, is it a giant like the Mountain from the Game of Thrones?
Just a big guy.
Maybe
because people were sure and relatively back then,
right? But probably some people weren't.
Yeah.
If they lived in some places where they had more resources and better genes. Yeah.
Pituitary gland problems, where we have got 7'11" plus.
Yep. But this seems different. The giants in the Bible and the giants in historical accounts, it seems different. It seems like it's a totally different species of human. And again, if we just found this guy recently that's 1 million years old, and now we know. So forever they were saying that human beings, the timeline used to be Homo sapiens emerged 50,000 years ago, and then they moved it to 150, then they moved it to 250, 300, as they find more information. Now they have to push it to 1 million. And if one day they find a fucking head as big as this table, like, what do they do? What do they do about that? Do they even tell us?
I don't think they would.
I don't think we would.
But why wouldn't they? It's weird. Why wouldn't they? Isn't that crazy? But we all agree. We all agree that if they did find a giant, they probably wouldn't tell us.
Yeah.
But
not until they did their own, figured it out for themselves or tested on what they want.
If they want people to, but I don't know why they wouldn't want people to know. Like, why am I convinced that they would hide that?
Well, if there is Antichrist on his way, and his goal, he already knows he lost. So his goal at this point is just to destroy as possible, get as many souls as possible. And finding stuff like that would prove the Bible more true would turn more people to Christianity or to God, the one true God. I could see where if there is like some type of spiritual force that is in somewhat control, then I could see that's the only way I can make sense of it. Is like, why cover up progress? Why not tell people the truth? Because
I think it's ego, and might be also related to good and evil in a lot of ways.
Loving yourself and not God over yourself.
Right, and being the person that has the knowledge and the person that distributes that knowledge and is the gatekeeper of it is a very intoxicating thing for a lot of these academics. And if all of a sudden something comes along and this is the speculation about what happened with the Smithsonian, that they took that stuff and just fucking tucked it away.
I would think they
femur bones.
They would want to, secretly do their own test without anybody knowing about it.
I know, but to what end? One point in time.
Before everybody else knows, they would already have answers. I don't know.
But wouldn't there be a time where someone would want to, be the guy who discovered it all and get all the credit for it? Like, that's why it doesn't make sense.
To me, if somebody knows God, it is freeing in a lot of way. And you realize that, no government is above you or no man is above you. God is above you, and you serve God. And if you can keep people away from God, you're that much more susceptible to being a slave to something else. And
whatever evidence or anything that can
prove God's existence. Yeah. I think that's going to be the main thing they show.
Right. Like the Shroud of Turin is an excellent example.
Yeah,
that one's an interesting one.
Weird one, man. There's a weird one. There's a lot of people that go out of their way to disprove it, But when you get into the dating of the cloth, so it used to be they were saying that it was only a few hundred years old, but now they're saying that the way the cloth is made, the cloth is made that's exactly consistent with the time that Jesus was alive, and that more tests need to be done to find out the exact age of it, because the problem is like you don't know like what piece they studied, and you're not studying the entire thing, and also the image of it is bizarre. Because the image of it, you really only see Jesus when it's a negative of it. Mm-hmm. And they don't know how that image was put on there. It was stained. It wasn't burned on there. They don't know what caused it.
It's like a blast of radiation.
Yes,
right.
Somebody recreated it with gamma radiation, I think. But the only problem, so it would just be, it would need to be an extreme source of light to do that. But the only problem is that would have vaporized, the heat from the light would have vaporized realistically. So they're wondering, well, if light did do it, how was this and passed through it? There's also X images in the shroud, apparently.
Well, you see this when you see the shroud in negative. Like Jamie, pull up an image of it. It's very strange. Like it shows the lash marks on his body. Yeah. It shows his facial features. It shows the holes where his wrist is, where he was crucified. It's very strange stuff. Because like for someone to do that as a hoax and to just not paint it, just to do it in some very weird. Go to that. Yeah, that one right where your cursors are over that. Make that big.
Recently said it's fake.
They've recently said it's fake?
They go back and forth on it.
The thing is, like, who is the person who's they, right?
So the Catholic Church is who
What's
owns
that, Jamie?
It.
Says they've been debunking it for 650 years.
Well, but 650 years ago, they didn't even have carbon dating. So what were they doing to debunk it back then? Yeah. There's a bunch of people that want to debunk it.
There's a document what does it say? Found.
A document?
Well, they were talking. I mean, I don't know.
Well, they talked about it being bullshit.
Yeah,
the thing is, people, I'm sure, called bullshit on it a long time ago.
People have talked about ways that some of that stuff could have been done.
Sure, but how would someone figure out that 500, 1,000, 2,000 years ago, whatever it is?
It could have been 300, 200. 150,
sure.
60 years ago.
Well, it's 650 years. If they've been debunking it for 650 years, you got to assume it's at least 650 years old. Well, so the thing is, like, see, it's been dated between 1355 and 1382.
The text was the document.
The text, what text?
That we're talking about here, not the shroud.
What is the text about? Medieval document has revealed the authenticity of the shroud that many believe wrapped and crucified. Was being called into question perhaps as early as 1355. Okay, well, that means that it existed 1355.
Yeah.
Depictions by clergymen. See, it's hard. Deceptions. Oh, excuse me. Deceptions by clergymen. His writings, now considered the oldest written rejection of the relic, predate the previous earliest documented criticism by the Bishop of Troyes, Pierre d'Arcis, in 1389. So, either way, we know it's at least 600 plus years old, and we know that the way that it was put on there was not stained, it was not painted. It's very strange. And if you look at it like that, they didn't even know that until they came up with photography, until they could take an image of it and make it a negative. They didn't see the face of Jesus in all the depictions. Mm-hmm. It's like this image right here is like, you look at that, the Shroud of Turin, like, yeah, I could say call bullshit, whatever. Yeah. But then you see the negative. I go back to those other images. So this is what it looks like when you run it through, when you use modern photography and turn it into a negative. That's really weird. Yeah. That this wasn't, that they didn't know about this in the 1300s.
Yeah.
A new study says it's something else. So they're going to have studies forever that debunk it. And one thing that academics love to do, they love to call everybody retarded.
Yep.
Everybody's an idiot. This is all fake. This is bullshit. But whatever that is, man, when you're just go back to the negative ones. The one that you just had. The one down. Right, yeah, that one, please. That's weird as fuck to me, man. That's weird as fuck that you couldn't see it normally, and you only see it when they make a negative of it. That is so strange. That someone would go out of their way to fake something in that way, where it only exists in a negative.
Well, and they don't even know how it happened.
Right. They don't know how to. I mean, they're saying they could reproduce it today, but I don't think anybody has. And also, how are you going to reproduce it to such an extent with so much detail that that matches the biblical depiction of the crucifixion.
Yeah.
Including the holes in the wrist, the lash marks on his back, the wound in his side. It's all really weird. At the very least, it's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really interesting stuff.
To me, that seeing that, I really don't even care how old people think it is, or like figure out how they did that first. To me, it's like, if this is
not only that, do that 600 fucking years ago, or 2,000 years ago, or whatever age it actually is.
I seen one article last year where they found dirt particles that matched, that trace back to Jerusalem. So it's like I say, they've been debunking it and saying it's authentic and debunking it. It seems like for the last 5 or 10 years now.
Oh, it's very weird stuff.
It's just, where are we at right now?
That one church in Ethiopia that's supposed to have the Ark of the Covenant there.
Yeah.
And all the people that guard it, they all get cataracts and they wind up dying of radiation.
I haven't heard that one.
I don't hear that.
I don't know about, because the Ark of the Covenant was when God the Father's presence was here on earth, not through Jesus. Old Testament, the I am on here, and that's what he resided in. And you had to do all these things to be in his presence, or you would literally just die, because he's holy. And to me, it's like lightness and dark cannot exist in the same place. So whatever, but God the Father's presence isn't there, and so I don't understand why it would still be messing people up.
Don't know what they were writing down, right?
Yeah.
The problem with all ancient religious texts, let's assuming there was real events.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is a lot of these things were told as an oral tradition for 100, 500, 1,000 years before they're ever even written down. And then they write them down. They write them down in Aramaic. They write them down in Hebrew. And then they have to translate it. And they translate it to Greek and Latin and then eventually English. You're missing a lot along the way. When I read these things, when I read the Bible, or if I read the Book of Enoch or any of these ancient texts, I'm always trying to say, okay, what were they trying to document?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what was the original event? Like, what actually happened? And the problem is, people are really bad at telling the truth. Like, human beings, when they see something fantastic, they always add their own little flavor to it. People add their own little thing to it. If they are of a certain belief, they're going to attach that belief to whatever this thing was. So it's no question that these people held whatever that was in such high regard, and it meant so much to them that they, like the book of Isaiah, where it's verbatim, that they wrote it verbatim for 1,000 years. Back when they started out, they were writing things down on animal skins.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things about the Dead Sea Scrolls that's so fascinating, is they had to do genetic testing. So they're writing these things down on these animal skins, and they had to make sure that the skin of this one is the same cow as the skin of this one. So if they do like genetic testing to make sure it's the same cow skin. So, okay, we got all the skin from this cow, and it's in this group of text, so start decoding it.
That's an interesting way. That's wild.
Yeah. It's wild.
I would have never thought of that.
And like Wes Huff said, how they write things, like they'd leave stuff out back then because it wasn't required back then. They would write down the basics. I watched that Wes Huff thing, and that was very interesting.
He's brilliant, man.
Yeah.
I've watched a bunch of stuff on him.
Very brilliant. But it's also, again, what were they trying to document?
Yeah.
There's clearly something was going on back then. Something happened.
Did you ever read that? It was somewhere in the Bible. I can't remember where. It's in the Old Testament. Somebody stole the ark. Some stole the ark, and like the next day, the next morning, like everybody was dead from stealing, and they pretty much said, "Hey, come get this thing, take it back."
Yeah, we don't want it.
Yeah.
We're good.
Well, that's what I believe is in this church in Ethiopia.
Yeah.
Because there's these Ethiopian Jews who also, their Bible is the Book of Enoch.
Yeah.
Do we have an image of this?
No, you can't see it. Nobody can get. I say, send in the SEALs. We need to fucking
SEAL Team 6.
Find out what the fuck is in there, bro. Put these guys in hazmat suits and let's get to the bottom of this.
If the U.S. knows you got it, it's going to be ours.
Well, yeah, you would imagine.
We're going to take it.
I would like
they
to
might
see
not know at all.
Well, what would happen with remote viewers if remote viewing is real? Get remote viewers in a room, and
we have talked